Welcome to the 6th episode of Explore Your Past with Mustafa Kureyşi. On this show, we discuss with my guests various topics related to the Turkish, Ottoman, and wider Muslim history and culture of Cyprus. To date, all of my guests have belonged to the Turkish community of Cyprus. Today's guest is unique. Not only have they got me to dress in this traditional attire, but belongs from the community widely known as the Cypriot Greeks. He is a convert to Islam, who is passionate about the island's links to its Ottoman and Middle Eastern culture. Yasu, salam alaikum.
Walaikum salam, yasas.
What's pais?
Alhamdulillah. Kala, esi?
Kala, alhamdulillah. Re filemu. Ise Müslümanos?
Ne, ime Müslümanım.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. We'll switch to English now because I think I've used up all my Greek. First, I would like to welcome you to the show. Thank you for accepting my invitation.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. This is a very special opportunity for me.
Could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I'm Kyriakos Ali Christodoulou. As you can tell by my name, I was from the Greek Cypriot community, but now I'm a Muslim, so I'm a little bit in between. And yeah, I'm a student at Queen's College for Islamic Studies, and in my last year. So inshallah, I'll be graduating soon.
Inshallah, inshallah. And first of all, the obvious question, I mean, how did you become Muslim? How was you introduced to Islam?
I was introduced to Islam in college. I met some friends who were Muslim, and they didn't push me. They didn't, invite me really. But it really shows like the good example that they put out. I said, I want to live an upright life like them. I want to follow the way they live. And slowly, I did my research, and alhamdulillah, I found the religion.
Alhamdulillah. Was there just anything specific about Islam? I mean, when looking in contrast with Christianity, was it the Trinity, or what was it? Was anything specific?
My favorite thing about Islam and Islamic governance in general is the acceptance of other religions. There's no problem with Christians or Jews or Zoroastrians. There's a acceptance or recognition of the other that I don't find, unfortunately, in Christianity, or at least not as much. And I've always believed that if you're a good person, you will go to heaven for sure. So I cannot say, oh, you have to be Christian, you have to be one way or the other, and that's the main reason why I changed.
That's amazing, and I mean you live in New York, right?
Yes, I'm here on sunny Long Island, right outside of the city.
Perhaps not quite as sunny as Cyprus, but it will have to do.
Yeah, it's good enough, but hopefully I'll be in Cyprus soon.
Inshallah. So I mean, it's incredible that someone from the Greek Cypriot community who's living in America was able to look beyond the propaganda and what the media has been pushing out regarding Islam, and you have actually found it to be something which is completely opposite to what they are propagating, and certainly I know from school education and what's being pumped out in the media, not only in Cyprus but in America as well, they don't really paint a good picture of Islam. So that's really amazing that you was able to come and look beyond the obvious.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a tough journey. It was not easy, but yeah, it's all about like unlearning what you've been taught through the Greek schools, through the different institutions, about the Ottoman Empire, about Islam in general. You're not going Turk. You're just accepting a different religion.
Yes, and that's an interesting thing actually, because particularly in the East and the Orthodox world, if you turn Muslim, you've become Turk in effect, haven't you?
Yeah, that's the way it's seen a lot of times. That you've kind of almost betrayed the community, and you've gone to the other side, which the other side is always the Turkish side, no matter even if Islam is surrounding Cyprus from Egypt and Syria as well.
Exactly, and in Egypt and Syria, you have many Christians of various denominations as well.
Yeah, it's all a mix, right? And that's the beauty of it.
Exactly. So going beyond the kind of theological questions now, another thing that makes you very interesting person, and something which made me reach out to you, is your interest in the Muslim civilization, in particular that of the Middle East. Could you tell us a bit about that? Yeah, how your interest developed into that area?
I have to be honest. When I was younger, I was very uh, Greek Cypriot in a lot of ways, like very Greek/Cypriot, right?
Mhm.
It was, I believe Cyprus was more European, that we were more Greek. And then slowly, I took classes in history, I took classes in different philosophy and things like that. And I came to understand that we are actually, I mean, physically and culturally much closer to Middle East. And from
Mhm.
that, I love Cyprus, I love my home. So I wanted to know more about it, and I want to know more about our neighbors.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we know that from not only historical evidence but from DNA research which has come out that the Proto-Cypriots, who are commonly referred to as the Etio-Cypriot, who spoke Etio-Cypriot, which was a Proto-Cypriot language which is unrelated to many to other languages, although some do argue it has some links with the Middle Eastern languages. We know that the original Cypriots had roots from Anatolia and the Levantine shore as well. Certainly, they had cultural exchanges with the Levant and Egypt as well. And throughout its history, going throughout the kind of the medieval period, the Ottoman period, all the way to modern day, where there is a strong cultural and as you said, racial link to the Middle East as well. So that's how it got. That's how your interest in the region started then.
Yes, yeah, it all stemmed, like a lot of my studies, a lot of my interests, they all stem from my love of Cyprus. Like,
Mhm.
I want to understand the country better, and I want to understand our neighborhood better.
Mhm. And I remember you posted on your Instagram profile not so long ago something along the lines of when we look back at Cypriot folk identity or our fond memories of Cypriot identity, the traditional identity, um, it's it's the Cypriot identity of the Ottoman period for both Turks or Greeks. But yet we don't use that term. We don't acknowledge that it is part of the Ottoman culture.
Yeah, exactly. It's very interesting. Like, even this faux costume that I'm wearing now
Mhm.
is dates back to probably the mid to late 19th century.
Mhm.
Uh, and this was the let's say one of the heights of Ottoman period in Cyprus and around the Middle East. And it really affects our culture till today. I think that's a key thing to understand. The mix of cultures that the Ottomans brought to all over the Middle East is the key to understanding the culture today.
Most definitely. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts about the Ottomans then, particularly in relation to their time in Cyprus?
Yeah, I have had a journey with the Ottomans. Right, it started when I was younger and learning in different institutions about uh, the alleged atrocities of the Ottoman Empire in Greece and
Mhm.
so on. And some of it is true, of course. There's not a perfect country out there,
Mhm.
but a lot of it is to for a political purpose. So I had to do a lot of unlearning and a lot of learning about, oh wait, actually under the Ottoman Empire, the Christians had their own laws and the Jews had their own laws, and they were allowed to practice mostly in peace. So with this, I found it very. It struck me very very deeply that I misunderstood my own history in this way.
Yeah. And was there anything in particular which impressed you about the Ottomans?
It's always for me the legal pluralism, like this idea that Christians could practice in peace, and they had their own patriarch in Constantinople, and they were allowed to do all their rituals, and it shows like a good tolerance for other people and their customs. You know, they're not just conquering and taking over and forcing their people to be one way or the other. No, they said you take your customs, you know, pay your taxes, become part of the society, but you can keep your culture, your dress, the way of being. And I really appreciate that. I think that's a very marked difference from any other empire.
You mentioned dress, which brings me nicely onto my next question. Anyone that knows you or follows you on your social media knows Kyriakos Ali as someone who likes to dress up in, well, in Middle Eastern attire, in Cypriot attire, in the Islamicate, in the attire of the Muslim world. Can you start off by telling us about your interest in this area?
Yeah, I've always been interested in like dressing like nicely. But I was always from a Western perspective. I would wear suits and so on. And as I became to challenge my identity more, I realized, oh, maybe I should explore more Eastern, quote unquote Eastern anyway, dress and really appreciate it and not be shy about it. I think that's the biggest thing I've been trying to do is I'm trying not to be shy about it anymore.
Okay, and certainly you have displayed a lot of confidence in your I mean, here we can see you dressed up as an Ottoman effendi, as an Ottoman gentleman there with the and I love that you have, you know, the detail as well. There's so much attention to the detail there.
Yeah, I have too much time on my hands sometimes.
No, you're following your passions, and that's really impressive. And for those who may be interested, and maybe say that flag there behind is Ottoman flag, right?
Yes, it's a reproduction, but it's an irregular design. It's not a very standardized, and that's very typical of Ottoman flags. I have a very deep appreciation for different flags and the history behind them.
And here we are again. I believe you're wearing what you're wearing today as well.
Yes, that's the same thing. So you can see the full body.
And we can see here, this is actually very Cypriot, very a Greek Cypriot costume, although very similar to the Turkish community. We can see that the baggy breeches that you're wearing, which is called braga in Greek,
yes,
dizlik in Turkish, which is a variation of the shalvar, which goes up to its knee length. But what distinguishes the Greek community's braga dizlik is that it is in the black color, and the midsection, the baggy midsection there, is a lot more. There's a lot more material used with the Greek community traditionally. Prior to the 20th century, the Turkish community or the Muslim Cypriots, Kıbrıs Müslümanları, would wear blue or white typically, and it wasn't as baggy as that of the Orthodox community. The top there, we can see you have the yelek, the vest as well. Again, which is in black, and the embroidery as well, very rich embroidery. This is showing someone of a high economic class.
Yes.
And we have the typical look of the region as well, not just typical for Cyprus, but for the whole of the East Mediterranean, North Africa, Middle Eastern region, and that's the collarless shirt as well.
Yes, I think that's an important detail. The collarless shirt. It was part of our history, and it's also recent times has had a revival since 1979. It's been part of to show our Eastern identity in a way that is still quote unquote professional.
Exactly, and we see some countries in the Middle East or professionals, as you mentioned as well, who prefer to wear the collarless shirt as a way of showing that they are proud of their roots and their heritage. So what I find incredible with what you do, Ali, is that you're able to promote that and bring some confidence, and hopefully bring some confidence to all Cypriot communities to be able to display their traditional costume, albeit even if it's an amalgamation of East and the West, and still holding on to some sort of Cypriot identity.
Yes, of course. I think that if there's one thing I can give to the viewers or to anyone who's listening, is that we should be proud of what we have in our country. And even if we have to fake it a little bit because we've lost certain things, it's good to keep up with these things and wear it in the street if you like. You know, you shouldn't be ashamed of it. I think that's the main thing. Don't be shy about it.
Yeah, it seems like in Cyprus, the traditional costume is restricted to folk dancing, and even then, it seems to be a romanticized or a kind of a Disney version of our folk costume. Not so much. The culture is not so much traditional in many ways. I noticed that on both sides of the border in Cyprus, that both communities are using the fez a lot less as well, even in the dances as well. I mean, I noticed that you have the fez on there as well. What are your thoughts on the fez there, from your research?
I think the fez is very important. First of all, it's very malleable. You can wear it with Western clothing, as it was in the late 19th century, early 20th century, or you can wear it with folk costume like I am now. It's also a sign of our Ottomanness, right? Not just like a Turkishness, as some people might say, but it's actually the mix. It's the mix of Greeks and Armenians and Arabs and so on that is symbolized in the red hat.
Absolutely. Multiculturalism of that region, in effect. So you had the various ethnicities, but also the religious groups as well. As you mentioned, it wasn't just the Muslim communities who were wearing the fez. It was also, as you mentioned, the Armenians and the Greek Orthodox communities and various others as well, who are all wearing the fez. But for some reason, we seem to be trying to do away. Our community seem to be doing away with the fez, which is unfortunate. Sure, there were some slight variations, different styles of fezes which came and went. Or how I'm wearing here, this turban is called dülbent in Turkish, which is a type of sarık, a type of turban. This would be specific to the Muslim community, and I've actually got a picture of my great grandfather here.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he has the fez on there, and he also has the dülbent, sarık, turban on. So this turban you wouldn't see a non-Muslim wearing with the fez, although a Muslim could be wearing a fez without the turban as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Both of the designs on the turban. Yeah, I hope to find one day and post more pictures of it. Maybe with a white raka, to show a little bit of the Turkish Cypriot side of things.
Well, I mean, about 100 years ago, it was either, during the Ottoman time, it was either Muslim, gayri-Muslim. Either it was categorized as Muslim or non-Muslim. And so if you was living in that time, you would have been heaped with the same community as the rest of the Kıbrıs Müslümanları, as the Muslim community as well back then.
Yes, yeah, the Muslim Millet.
Exactly. I want to share also, just to show you that your interest is not restricted to Cypriot clothing as well. We have here you dressed in a thobe with a kufiye. This is a Levantine style of
this is
kufiye?
A Yemeni way of wrapping it, and you can see the hanjar there as well, the knife, which is also very typical in the Gulf and Yemen. So that was the aesthetic I was going for with the suit jacket and the thobe.
I see. This is the Yemeni look then.
Yes.
And we have here, and you may see some surprise in Ali's face because I haven't shown him which pictures I actually picked out. And here we've gone beyond the Middle East to to Turkestan, Central Asia. This is a Turkmenistan traditional clothing.
Yes, yeah. I have a side interest in Central Asia. I think it's a wonderful, interesting place that doesn't get talked about enough. So I have gotten in the habit of collecting some different robes and chapan from Turkmenistan, as you can see in this picture, from Uzbekistan, some Tajiks clothing. So yeah, I'm all over the place. The Islamicate world.
The Islamicate world, and you can see that again. The attention to detail, amazing. The thobe, the jubbe here, Turkmen, the skull cap, also very typical of Turkmen dress. The flag, you have the atlas is more. You have the atlas material behind there, I believe.
Yeah, this is a ikat.
This is more Uzbek, Uyghur?
Yeah, that is from Uzbekistan mostly.
Uzbekistan. Amazing. And we also have here, you are dressed as an Ottoman soldier, which would have been in the Çanakkale.
Yes. I came across the helmet as I'm forgetting the name now. But the kabalak, yes. And I thought it would be wonderful to wear it and honor the Ottoman sacrifice in the First World War. I think for all the mistakes that happened, they were trying to defend us from aggression.
Yeah. And I love the way that you explained it there, because often when we look back in history, people will think that the sole inheritors of the Ottoman state, the Ottoman history, the Ottoman culture, the Ottoman cuisine is the current Turkish Republic, and that simply isn't the case. And that struggle which you're representing there in that image was an anti-imperialistic struggle. It was one of where you had Albanians coming to support, you had Arabs coming to support, people from all around the world. You have South Asian Muslims who were selling their gold to send money for the struggle. So we have to kind of see what the Ottoman state was for what it was from the view of that time.
Definitely, yeah. I think there were accounts of Kazakh soldiers on the Russian side, hiding Ottoman soldiers so that way they wouldn't get captured. But this is a pan-Islamic, pan-Asian almost idea. The Ottomans was a greater thing than just the borders of the Middle East.
Yeah, and certainly the Sultan used their authority as the Caliph of the Muslims to send a message to call the Muslims for this common struggle. And there was many Kıbrıs Müslümanları, Cypriot Muslims, who actually either sent money or secretly went and fought in the struggle. There were many doctors that went to support the cause as well, and many were either died, were unable to return because Cyprus was under British control back then. So they had to go secretly. It wasn't like Anatolians who could just freely move and support the struggle there. That's amazing. One last photo I've got here to do with clothing is a surprise there. Your pappou, is it?
This is my great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather.
Yes.
And
yeah, he's wearing almost the same thing I am. He's wearing a Western jacket over it. But yeah, it's a photo that I found that shocked me a little bit. Because I'm not used to seeing like people in traditional clothing, especially in Cyprus.
Yeah.
It's very westernized. So I thought even in that time, it was a little bit late to be wearing this. But I'm happy and very proud that he hung on to his culture. And I met him only once when I was very young. But even then, he was still wearing it.
Wow. So he held very proudly to his Cypriot heritage. And it's funny that, nowadays, especially people from our generation will say that they love their Cypriot identity And without going into the politics of it all, it's always Cypriot, this Cypriotness, Cypriot identity, Cypriot culture, Cypriot politics. But are we living our life as Cypriots? Are we representing our lives in a way that is a natural evolution of Cypriot identity? That's something for our viewers to actually think about there. Other than the clothing aspect, you also have an interest in food, and I believe you've noticed many borrowings or connections with Cypriot cuisine with our neighbors as well.
Yes, yeah, I have many like Egyptian friends, and so I've eaten like different Egyptian dishes, and you know they're all, I would call them all Ottoman, right? Because they're part of the milieu. And dishes like molokhia, which is I thought it was only in Egypt. When I went there, I had some, and it was amazing, and I've had in New York a number of times, and then I found, oh, it actually exists in Cyprus as well. So there's connections with our taste buds as well to Egypt, to Anatolia, of course, to the Levant, kanafa, other sweets, and baklava, of course. Ottoman coffee, we'll call it, because Arabic coffee, Cypriot coffee, it's all very, you know, almost the same. This coffee culture is very similar throughout the Middle East and throughout the Ottoman Empire.
Yes, certainly. I mean, it shouldn't come as no surprise. I mean, Cyprus, being a Middle Eastern island with an Ottoman heritage, naturally has strong cultural links with the lands neighboring her. And you know, you mentioned molokhia, which is, for our viewers who will be predominantly from the Turkish community of Cyprus who will be viewing, molokhia is actually the national dish of Egypt. Although we see it very much as a Turkish Cypriot cuisine, it was known in Cyprus as like a Muslim dish predominantly, but there were Greeks, Cypriots, Greek Orthodox people who mixed and lived side by side with the Turks, and many of them actually borrowed and took on this dish as well. So we shouldn't see it as specifically Turkish Cypriot, Greek Cypriot, or Cypriot cuisine. You mentioned a coffee as well, rightly as well. I think due to political reasons, everyone's tried to like put their ethnicity's name before coffee, ... coffee, right?
Yes.
And when I went to Bosnia, actually, as close as they are with the Turks, because of the conflict that's gone on there, they have been called Turks by the Serbs and the Croatians, and to kind of highlight the fact that, yeah, we get along with the Turks, but we're actually Bosniaks. So they even have recently changed the name of Turkish coffee to Bosnian coffee, Bosanska kafa. So it's exactly the same thing, but you know, for whatever reason, they've changed the name. But ultimately, we're sharing the same coffee. I know in Arab countries there is a slight they add extra things like in Lebanese style coffee, but essentially it's the same. It's the same drink. We mentioned molokhia, hellim, halloumi, as well. Also in many Arab countries, halloum.
Yeah, this was another surprise for me, meeting Syrians and saying, oh, you have this too. You have different dishes that we also have. You know, we share a lot of culture. And this is not the way I grew up. Like, I didn't grow up saying or hearing that there were Syrians that ate the same food we do. So it's very interesting to have these revelations.
Yeah. Another one is, I believe in Greek, magaronia do furnu.
Yes.
Yeah, which we call fırın makarnası, which translates to the same oven macaroni, right? And this is in Arab countries as well. Makarona bil bishamil.
Yes.
Yeah. So same dish.
Everywhere.
I mean, it changes slightly. I've noticed that the Arabs have pretty much the same dishes as we do, but they have more, maybe perhaps slightly more spices or more sauces in their dishes.
Yeah, it reflects the different regions. These are regional variations, but of the same theme. And I think that's important. I don't want to undermine, the identity of anybody in any particular region, and particularly our own. Say, everything we have is just Ottoman. No, we have our own variations that make it unique.
Absolutely. I mean, even the hellim halloumi, the molahia, the makarona, the fırın makarnası, although even the coffee, although essentially it's the same, but we have, as you mentioned, slight variations. So, which is great, And we all have the baklava, we have also like things like shamishi, and such as well. Even things like moussaka, for example. Moussaka, the dish made from aubergine. Is it eggplant in America? Eggplant, is it? Aubergine? Eggplant. So even that, actually the name spread via Ottoman Turkish, but the name itself is from Arabic origin, which is quite interesting. I don't know who started it off, but essentially what we need to think of is these borders weren't around when these dishes were created. So there were communities living side by side with each other. So we just have to think of things like baklava and moussaka and oven macaroni and such as food of that region, not of a specific modern state.
Yes, I think that's important. It was, we were all mixing. To say anyone was 100% anything or something else, even the food being 100% Cypriot or something, it's a mistake. We were part of a community. And I think that's a beautiful thing, to have a community.
Yeah. And I mean, traditionally in the Ottoman times, that one of the largest cities in Egypt, Iskandariya, Alexandria, had a large Christian, Greek Orthodox Cypriot community. And in places like Palestine and Lebanon, they had influx of Turkish Muslim Cypriots as well. And then it was back and forth. So it was Egyptians and Levantines moving to Cyprus. I have a black Egyptian ancestor. He was known as Gara Salih, Black Salih, it was known as. So that's of course, if we're mixing, we're sharing our dishes, our culture, our language. Part of the language, for example, like in Greek Cypriot, for example, the word for watermelon is patika, right?
Yes, patika.
And in Arabic,
it's patih.
Patih. But in mainland Greece is karpuzi.
Yes.
And the Turk
to Turkish, right? Karpuz.
Karpuz, yes. Both the Anatolians and the Cypriot Turks both say karpuz, which means the Greek Cypriots certainly did not get that word from the Turks. They didn't get the word from mainland Greece. And so it's clear that there's a link there with Arabs.
Yeah, that's a very often overlooked part of our history and part of our culture, is the Arab influence from Levantine coast in Egypt. It's important to remember this, especially today, now that we are seeing people from these areas coming to Cyprus.
Yeah, absolutely. Another word, is it fraula?
Oh yes, fraula. Yeah.
Fraula. This is also in Arabic as well.
Oh, this one I didn't know. I didn't know it was in Arabic as well.
Yes. And in the Turkish dialect in Cyprus, words like, for example, barra, which means like get lost, barra, yalla barra. This is specific. This is Arabic, but it's specific to the dialect of Egypt.
Oh.
So no one in Turkey would understand what barra means, and Arabs who are not familiar with the Egyptian dialect will not know what barra is either.
That's amazing. Yeah, Egypt is a huge country, always has been. There is no way that we couldn't have some influence from Egypt. I had members of my own family who lived in Cairo for many years. They would spend the winters in Cairo, and then summer they would come back to Cyprus.
Mm-hmm. You have I mean, I don't think there's a specific English name. Sometimes the water pipe, the nargile, the shisha, hubble bubble. This is another thing which is part of our tradition. What are your thoughts on it?
Yes, I think it's an important part of our culture, even though maybe it's not the most healthy.
Yes.
But it's also, there is in Arabic it's an adab, right? There's a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Not with the loud music and the club and alcohol. It should be like a cafenio, a cafe. You know, you have your coffee, your tea, and you smoke and you chat about the news. This is
Mm-hmm.
the right way to do it, I think. The traditional way that our forefathers did it many years ago.
Yes.
They would read the newspaper out loud to everyone, and they would discuss the news of the day. And I think that's something that is worth bringing back.
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, the coffee house, along with the nargile, and it's called argile in Greek.
In Greece, it would be Nargile.
Mm-hmm.
In Cyprus, I understand we say it more of the Levantine way, Argile.
Nargile. This is the same in Lebanon, right?
Yeah.
Nargile, yes. It reminds me of because I was quite surprised that the traditionally argile was very popular, not just in the Arab world, but in Cyprus, in modern day Turkey, in Greece. There's a Remedigo song, Argilemu Yadis Vines, my dear Nargile, why do you die out? It's very famous song, and the Remedigo movement is from like 1920s, if I remember correctly. So up until that point in time, the Nargile was still very popular in the Eastern Mediterranean. It seemed to have gone out of style when the Westernization influence increased, it peaked. But when you go to Cyprus nowadays, both sides of the border, I've noticed that the Nargile culture seems to be having a bit of a revival, particularly with the younger generation.
Yes, it's very interesting. The Nargile went west and then came back east, right? And I think that's how it is, like, having the revival in Cyprus now. I still think they lack the right culture, but that will come with time, I think, to revive this traditional way of doing it instead of a more Western, foreign way of doing it.
Yes, and it shows that although politically we are free from the grasp of the West, of the Western imperialists, Cyprus is very much since 1960 free from British clutches, other than the few bases that they have in Cyprus. However, we are still stuck in this neo-imperialist mindset, be it Turk or Greek, and we have all but left our culture and replaced it totally with Western culture, and things like nargile or even the shalvar, the baggy breeches, we only find it acceptable to take when we see that they have it in vogue. So when nargile is acceptable, we take it back. The baggy breeches, we see it was quite fashionable a few years ago. We start wearing baggy breeches again. What else was there? What was about 5 years, 10 years ago? The kufriye was very popular as well.
Yes.
The kufriye, it can be black and white or red or white. Typically, this what Ali has on his head in this image is also called shamal as well. And
even the way that has evolved. Traditionally, maybe 100 years ago, there were all kinds of colors and different designs and flowers and so on. Today, you only see all white, all black, maybe some red and white as the one in my picture. But yeah, there has been like a consolidation of it, and I don't understand why, but I think it would be nice to bring more colors back.
Yeah, I know in central Anatolia, I think they call it kefir. They have a yellow one.
Oh,
Yeah, and in Eastern Turkey they use the black and white one.
yeah, like sham.
Sham, exactly,
Levant. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, we should absolutely. I mean, if there's anything that we can take from this conversation and from yourself, Ali, because I must say, you're an inspiration.
You're too kind.
You're giving us confidence that we can take elements of our culture that we have left behind and be proud of it. You know, many communities from many African communities, South Asian communities, many communities from around the world would wear their traditional clothing, maybe not in their day-to-day business, but perhaps on a Friday prayer or on a special day, weddings, you know, and rather than us just holding on to it for folk culture, it would be great to see us highlight and be proud of our attire, our food, our customs a lot more.
I couldn't agree more. I think that we can take something from our neighbors in Syria, in Palestine, and etc., where it's not uncommon to see people dressed in traditional dress alongside Western dress, and they're going around their daily business, and no one stares at them. No one is interested in, oh, what is this different person doing? So yeah, I hope one day we can be more like that, and they can be more like us, and we will trade certain things. Yeah, I hope that I can walk like this in Cyprus on a Friday to go to the Jummah prayers, and no one will care.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for coming on, Kyriakos Ali.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time.
And it's great. I mean, it's great to have a fellow Cypriot on who's able to dress up and be proud of their identity. And hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
Yes, I would love that. I have to brush up on my Turkish next time.
Yes, next time we'll be conversing in Turkish then.
Inshallah.
To our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And we'll be seeing you hopefully soon again on another episode of Explore Your Past. Thanks.